Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino. And today I have a special guest. His name is Kyle Moses. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, man. Thank you for having me on. It's a great day.
Yeah, man, I love it. Definitely, I'm glad to have you here. So before we dive in, let me just give our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background. So Kyle, after many years in corporate America in a big box retailer management and years of digital marketing, decided to make his own leap of faith into real estate. Mm-hmm. He was able to take his expertise and join in with two partners to form a real estate juggernaut. Together, between his two business partners, he has two Keller Williams Market Centers in the Dallas market. They are part of the largest Keller Williams brokerage in the entire company and the 8th largest brokerage by volume in all of the real estate. Under their direct supervision, they oversee roughly 500 agents between the two offices and around 450 to 500 million in annual sales volume. This is all done in addition to their personal retail teams in both New Mexico and Texas, which does by itself over 40 million in sales in volume. In addition to that, they have a real estate investment business that focuses mainly on hotel and property flipping. They flip over on an average of 4 to 5 homes per month and probably another 8 to 10 hotel deals each month as well. Lastly, for the last 2 years, they've been fortunate enough to coach over 300 students on the real estate investment journey. And they have helped many live their 9-to-5 and countless others in out another stream of revenue through their lives. Wow, that's amazing. Definitely a lot of great things you have going on there. And so definitely I want to tap into all of that. Before that, though, tell me about your upgrowing and where were you originally born and how was your childhood?
Yeah, so for me, I was born in this town called Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So for people, Oshkosh Bagosh clothing is something that people have heard of before. That's where it's from. So
okay.
Yeah, so like throughout my military career and things like that, people be like Oshkosh Bagosh. Yeah, that's me. But you know, it's I grew up in one of those, I guess, like fairy tale broken homes.
Okay.
Parents divorced when I was really young. I lived with my mom. And we were on, government assistance, state aid. I mean, it's difficult for me to talk about because to me, it's not a, when I tell people my story, it's not a pity story. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I am where I am today because that happened. There was, alcohol abuse, physical abuse. I mean, it was truly a pretty bad upbringing. All that to be said, but the thing that I am super fortunate about is that I tell people, like, I am where I am today because people who didn't need to gave a damn about a kid, and they saw things in me even when I didn't. I had plenty of opportunities to be a knucklehead and go off the beaten path, and people who really just are good people, help steer me in the right direction. It's then it's just a lot of overcoming the the limiting beliefs. When you grow up with people who are poor, like I still go back to the area where I'm from and it keeps me grounded. I mean, shoot, the house that I grew up in, it's like a $20,000 home.
Wow.
I drive a vehicle that costs more than that, which is not really saying much, but
yeah.
but so yeah, it's been a journey, man. I've lived a full life is what I tell people.
Yeah, and you know what? And one thing though that I think is so important, or like I like what you mentioned, and is you are who you are because of who you were in the past. And sometimes I tell, one of the things that I tell people is that they allow the fear to take away the opportunity. And so, if you don't allow that fear to take away that opportunity, then the opportunity is going to be endless, right? Number one. The second thing to that is that I think a lot of people get hung up on that. Like, they become the victim. They become this mentality though that, hey, well, I'm a victim to the society. I'm a victim of being born to a poor family. I'm a victim of not having this. And therefore they decide to stay there without realizing that sometimes you got to go through that little bit of pain to come out on the other side with a bigger purpose. And that's kind of what you did. So I want to learn more about what were some of the influences besides people seeing something that perhaps you didn't see on yourself. And that's a lot of times, right? People don't see that. We don't see our true potential until somebody kind of points it out to you and says, hey, you might be able to do something bigger and better, right? So for you going through, a divorce, your parents being divorced, alcohol abuse, physical abuse, growing up poor, what were some of the things that kind of kept you grounded and like say, what, I want to change something, or how was that all about?
Yeah. It was a combination of a lot of things. So I'm the oldest. I've got two younger siblings, and at a really young age, I was forced to start taking care of them. So a lot of, there've been a lot of people out there who are in my situation. So it was looking out for them. And ironically, one of the things that, and I'm fortunate, my grandmother is a teacher. And so when things would get bad at home, I would read, and I would read different books. And so what it was is that I started to develop this why not me mentality at a young age, because I'm reading about these things. And honestly, like, that was the best thing to ever happen to me. It was like autobiographies of leaders like Colin Powell and people who have been through similar upbringings. Is like, wow, they made it. And so then the biggest question that you have to ask yourself is like, how? And so that was the big thing, is like between education and athletics, like that's, what got me through all of that. And that's where, that's the one area that has put me in front of the right people is, by virtue of reading and being well studied, I was a good student and I was an okay athlete, but that allowed me to get in front of those people who saw something in me. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized just like how truly like bad my upbringing was. Cause I always joked, I'm like, I thought it was cool that I got free lunch at school. I didn't have to pay for school supplies. And for whatever reason, my friends, their parents were always okay with me staying over on school nights. So I thought it was cool. I didn't realize until I became an adult and like, reconnect with those friends and their parents, like, your parents just weren't good people. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I was just too dumb to understand.
Wow. No, and again, that's one thing. Like sometimes when you're in the middle of that maybe storm or whatever the case may be, sometimes you don't see it, right? You don't see it for yourself until somebody's going to point it out for you. And so I love that too, though, the fact that you started reading and just, I think that's one thing that even when we're going through some difficult or challenging times, we got to be able to find something that can kind of gear us to a different direction where we can start maybe finding that focus, right? And so in this case, you reading and now it's changing the mentality of, well, if somebody else is doing it, then I can do it, which is, again, is that big of a message. It's like, if somebody already done that, you can definitely do that. And it's not about, a lot of the times we forget about the right questions is how can I do it, versus certain aspects that we ask ourselves, right? And so that's kind of what you're doing is like, why not me? What are the possibilities, right? So that's amazing. Now you were in the military, right? So why did you decide to join the military?
Yeah. So the biggest, it's like my family dynamic is interesting. It's like my grandfather is my hero. He was a poor farmer and, grew to call it a self-made millionaire. He just moved his money right. But my mom was a black sheep. So they really weren't around and had that influence. And the thing is I always had a great deal of respect for him. And when I finally got old enough, they offered to pay for my college. Like suddenly it was like, where were you all these years? And then suddenly you're around, which, it is what it is. But it was really, I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet. And
Mm.
I had always had this allure of the military. I wanted to join like either the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. And when I was 17, my two best friends were like, "Hey, we're joining the Army." So I was like, "Screw it. I don't really." And so
Yeah.
I ended up joining the infantry. But a lot of that was just so I could have college paid for. I've always wanted to serve something bigger. And it just joining the military seemed like the right thing to do. And it's been a mindset that's kind of followed me through all of this. Is everything I do serves something bigger than myself. So it's
Yeah.
like, you're never going to beat me. My why is always going to be bigger just because it's not about me.
Mm.
And that was one of the main reasons why I joined that is, if you're going to break through some of these things, it's like, well, I'm okay with being shot at and someone trying to blow me up, and it worked out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let me ask you, where did that drive or the idea of you want to serve something bigger than you, where did that come from?
I think a lot of that had to do with my grandmother was a teacher for 43 years.
Okay.
And, for like a short stint, my grandparents pulled me out of my parents' house, and I got to actually attend the school where she taught. And so a lot of what my grandma did was she was part of different organizations, different church groups, different activities. And that was always something that I really enjoyed, was just seeing how people reacted and gravitated towards that. So I think, honestly, that's a lot of where it started. But then it was, even before that, is having to watch my siblings when my parents would, be out drinking or just absent, is knowing that like somebody has to be there for them. And that just started to translate to other people. I don't know, a really innate thing of, I can't really explain it. There's just a certain gravity. Like when I walk into a room or when I work with people, whether I like it or not, people will seek me out. And, I think it's just, it's an outlook. It's the way that you carry yourself. But yeah, it really all started from there. Is just learning to be a good person, but, to serve others. That was always something that was heavily ingrained in me, was, serve others. It's kind of I say this in other venues, but the rising tide raises all ships. So if I can make
Yeah.
everyone else around me better,
Yeah.
I'm going to float.
Yeah, that definitely, I love that. How would you define your why? A lot of times people are told, find your why, find your purpose. What would be your idea of how to find that why so that people can start moving closer to that?
When I talk to other people about whys, because it's a lot of times it's surface level, I'm like, your why is something that sticks with you when you get punched in the mouth repeatedly over and over and over again. And you find out how flimsy someone's why is. And to me, my why is so motivating that I will not let other people go through what I had to go through. And it's something to where, I will lend a hand, I will serve, but it's, again, I am where I am today because along the way, people selflessly did things for me that they didn't have to. And that's what drives me, is the bigger the platform that I can be on, the more people that I can serve, I know that I'm making an impact. It's, when people are standing around my casket someday, the biggest thing that I want them to say is, I'm a better person because he was in my life. And, when I managed retail, big and small boxes, it's a constant door, people work there 6 months. They're like, yeah, I worked there. And what I would tell people, and I made this number up, I was like, 85% of people that I hire will be gone in the next 12 months. I said, that's just how it works. But I want you to look back on this experience and say that I learned something and I'm a better person because I worked for Kyle. And that's always been what drives me, is it's not about me. It's not and it's one of those things where, and this, you talk to a bunch of people, you're out there as well, as people really don't care about us as much as we really as we like to think so. It's a really conceited opinion, but people always remember how you made them feel. And, I remember how these people in my life made me feel when they, when I didn't have anything, when I was down and out, when, there were things going on in life. And so that's really, to get connected to that level of a why, it's unshakable.
Yeah.
is it doesn't matter. I can lose over and over again, but there's always another opportunity for me to help someone. And so like, that's what lights my fire. And that's what I tell people is like, your why, like just talking about it fires me up.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's the biggest thing is that it's unshakable.
Yeah, and I know through your journey, I'm sure, because a lot of people have gone through that, and I can see that with all the things you've gone through, you always go about, or you're always gonna hear that no, or you have so many down moments, right? And you keep falling down. Besides your why, like how do you continue to get up and say, you know what, let me just keep doing this and keep doing this, because that's where a lot of people get stuck, and I'm like, that's it, I'm gonna give up, right?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is like, I just read a book by Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game. And I was like, wow, this is the first time that I've had someone actually like, this is how I think. And, the thing that keeps me going is it's really just that I'm not there yet. My why and what I'm doing, it's not tied to money. It's not like, the thing is that, and you know this, the more people you help, wealth will just come from it. Like if I help 1 billion people and they all give me $1, I made $1 billion. It's not a good analogy,
Right.
but it just, that's what it's to me, wealth is a byproduct of action. And so that's always the biggest thing is that like, when I hear no, it's just, I iterate, and by iterate is just, I don't make my biggest superpower to anybody I talk to is I don't make the same mistake twice. That's been the only thing that carries me through life is like, I'm not going to do that again. Where most people will. And so that's really what it is that it's my why is about other people. And so you tell me no, you turn me down. I'm not done helping you yet, Caesar. Like I'm not done. And so like, that's what keeps me going. And so it's like, I mean, you see the businesses behind me. I mean, real estate wasn't even a main focus of mine 2 years ago. It came to me because everything else that I did imploded. And this was just these are all widgets of helping people, in different ways. And so it's not like the no's, the setbacks, it's not about me.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing is being able to separate that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. One thing that I want to understand, talking about the companies behind you and the real estate, why did you decide to leave corporate America and go into this, or what was the determining factor of that?
So I was really good at what I did and I achieved metrics every time. So like when I was in corporate America, one of the biggest things that I did was I would go into stores that were kind of failing or troubled and I would assess their operations and I'd be like, okay, we need to fix this. We need to fix this. Again, it was all people, helping people. It was just, business was a widget. And so in corporate America, the thing is that people like to tell you how much you're worth. And anytime that I wanted to promote or move up a level, I'd be like, well, no, you haven't been here long enough.
Yeah.
I got sick and tired of someone telling me how much I was worth. And so that was, but to be honest though, again, coming from where I did, I had a lot of very limiting beliefs. I grew up in a blue collar area that what you did is you worked your 40 hours, you worked there for 35 years, you lived a mediocre life and that was it. And so, it took me probably longer than it should have to become a full-time entrepreneur. I had always had multiple jobs and side hustles, and there was never any one thing going. I mean, shoot, I don't even have one business right now. But the biggest thing is that I was afraid to bet on me. I was afraid to move the chips in the middle and really finally see for myself what others saw. And, it got to a point to where my ex-wife was just like, you know what, you need to do this. This is killing you. And she eventually was, are you gonna quit your job and go full into this? She goes, if the answer is no, she goes, stop talking to me about it. I'm done talking about it. She goes, this is all on you right now. You know what you need to do. And I finally did it. It was the scariest moment of my entire life. But it's Steve Harvey talks about it there's that moment in your life where you have to just jump and believe that your parachute will open. Like you're going to hit a lot of rocks, but it will open. And when it does, man, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that definitely that's a place where people get stuck a lot. And I know I did myself when I decided to take my own leap of faith. It was more like a 7-month, thinking about it and going back and forth, which kind of leads to my next question. There's always those voices, inside of you. And even with you just doing that already, you're going to have those, that inner voice, telling you probably, hey, Kyle, what the hell did you do? Like, was this the right decision? Or what are you going to do now? Or like, there's no secure income coming in. Like, were you going through a lot of that stuff, the first couple of years? And how do you handle that?
I tell everyone negative 101.36. Like that's the number where a lot of things change. That was my bank account one morning.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh Lord, here we go. And I was full-time into my digital marketing agency. And I called my business partner. I was like, we've got a problem. I go, well, I've got a problem. And he was like, okay, what's going on? And we were at a crossroads in the business at that moment. And I was like, I started looking at some like third shift stuff so I can start. And he goes, why? And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, you know what? He goes, even if you want to go get a job, he goes, what? It's 3 months until you quit and do it again. He's like, this is what you've just got to, he gave me a dose of my own medicine. He was like, just calm down. He was like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm driving to the gym. He was like, perfect. He was like, go to the gym, think it through. And that was, to me, it was just being able to slow it down. A lot of times when people are faced with that, they get so much anxiety. And, I had my moment. I had my hour or two of like self-loathing, like, what am I going to do? But then, I got really calm. And you start to see things clearly. That was something that even in the military that we learned, like, I was in the infantry. And so, we're in the stuff is like being able to see, clarity and chaos is what separates, the true leaders. And it was in that moment that I just needed to be poised. I needed to kind of take into account what my resources were, what my assets were. And here's the thing, in 24 hours, I had negotiated a deal with someone to buy our marketing agency and we were fine. Like that's all it took. But in that moment, I didn't see kind of what the opportunities were in front of me. And it was, without making that move, I was still living in Wisconsin at the time. Without doing that, I'm not sitting in Dallas, Texas right now having this conversation with you.
Yeah.
So, it's like collect your bearings and just don't panic. Bet, like remember why it is you did what you did, why you bet on yourself, and just push forward.
Yeah, I like one thing that I think it was Denzel Washington. He said, "Don't have a plan B if you have a plan A. Why have a plan B? Because then you start focusing on plan B and you forget about plan A, right?"
Yeah.
And so in that case, right, if the plan is I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur, I'm going to get into real estate or digital marketing, whatever the case may be. Against all odds, continue to focus on that somehow, and even on the down moments, which I know I've gone through a lot of those down moments, and it's like, that I go back and like is that temptation, right? That I go back and get a job, right? And at this point, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna go back, and I'm gonna continue to do this until I freaking keep doing it, right? So how did you stumble on real estate?
So real estate, like I like to, it's one of those, it's like I didn't find the streets found me kind of thing. And, I loved how you quoted Denzel. I quoted Michael Jordan, and it was like, why should I worry about a shot I haven't taken yet? Like why worry? But the real estate thing. So in digital marketing, like we had worked with real estate agents doing their digital marketing all over the country. So it had always been there. It was part of our niche, one of the niches that we worked. And it's funny, for those who practice faith, like the Lord he's a very funny man, or a being, we'll say. But I absolutely despised working with real estate agents and digital marketing. I was like, there's no pleasing you guys. You always want stuff for less. And then all of a sudden, in February of 2019, 18, 19. Yeah, something like that. Our marketing agency. So we had sold my digital marketing agency. I was now running a new entity, which brought me to Texas. We had a partner lose our business a couple $100,000, which ended up making the marketing agency dissolve.
Wow.
And so the one partner that I had a good relationship with, and he was also the only one in Dallas, was like, well, so what are we going to do? And again, I was faced with one of those moments of like, well, I could get a job, like there's plenty of opportunity for me here in the DFW area. And he was like, well, he goes, I've been doing real estate and real estate investment for the last 20 years. He's done thousands of transactions. And he was like, well, I want to do coaching. I want to get into real estate investment coaching. He goes, that's what you do. He goes, you work with info products, you work with these coaches. I was like, well, I will do that under one condition, is that we grow a real estate investment company. Like, I'm not going to be one of those gurus that isn't out there doing it, isn't essentially working alongside their people. And so I had dabbled in some real estate stuff, not as full bore. I mean, the thing is like we had worked with a couple thousand real estate agents. Like we'd done well enough, but I could never really put my hands on it. And so that was kind of the condition was, all right, fine. Well, let's just do the thing. And it has grown into something that I would have never imagined. Because, this all goes back to each one of these businesses is just about people and making people better. Like I can tell the story of each one and how they're all set up. And so like, to me, like it was something that hit me like a ton of bricks about a year and a half ago, was that it's not about my superpower is people. My superpower is people. Everything else is just a widget. And so I was never really good at retail. I was good at the people who ran the businesses. Like I was really good at that. With real estate, I know a lot about it, but I'm really good at people. I'm really, really good at people. I'm really good at serving people. And so that it really found me. And so that was, I no longer speak ill of anything because I know that if I do, I'll probably end up in that industry at some point.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's three things you talked about that I think they're critical to kind of point out. Number one is actually, talk about it, just showcasing that, which is, again, going from a very humble beginning to creating having a good corporate job, to taking a leap of faith, to having this great company, to losing it all and then start all over again. And that story itself is the life of becoming an entrepreneur, number one. Number two, it is also the life of, if you want to be in this space, you have to be able to have the ability to do those things and fall down and get up again and do it as many times as you can until you're pretty much drop dead, in other words, right? And that's where people lose that momentum, right? So definitely you're a true testament of that. That's number one. The second thing you talked about is that once you find that calling, right, God or the universe, whatever you believe upon, right, is going to put you on that path. And you got to be able to, once you can find that, go back to that. So for you, it has been serving other people. That is your calling. That is your niche. That is your expertise. And I think that once you can find that through the different things you're doing in life, then you're going to start getting back aligned to what is your true calling, right? Which is definitely amazing. And then the last thing you talked about is not speaking ill of anything else, because it comes down to the mindset. So I want to talk about the mindset for a second, because I think that's so critical when it comes down to so many different aspects, right? Like how critical it is to you to have a positive driven mindset. And I know we have all these negative thoughts that I was talking about this last time. You have so many thoughts on any given day, and 85% of those 60,000 thoughts are negative. How do you keep your mind positive and keep pushing through.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is, it's so funny. I had this, I did a live on my own personal page and in our Leading Through Change group.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking. My hook was, I was like, Mercury is in retrograde, the people who follow that stuff, that's all fun and well. Cause I was getting into a funk. The thing is that I love, when Tony Robbins talks about it, the stacking gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
when I do my team calls, I stack wins. But as far as the mindset goes and I tell people this, I control the controllables in my life. And so there are certain few things that I can control. The number one thing that I can control is my routine. I was very open with my audience on Monday when I talked about this. I was just, I could feel myself slipping. Father's Day is one of those, it's like, it's a day of self-loathing for me, just because it's like, I've never had that father figure in my life. And so, I was like, okay, cool. It's like you just try to stay off social media.
Yeah.
And I was like, it got to be the end of the night and I was like, I am not going to allow myself to start the week like this. And so I was, it's being very accountable to it. So like as far as having a positive mindset, control the controllables. So it's like, routine, but then accountability to your thoughts. And so that's always the biggest thing, is that the fastest way to start feeling more negative emotion is when you start blaming other people for the way that you feel. I always tell people, I was like, if you have a problem with something, you are the one with a problem. And it's, because it's like right now, like, you could be saying a whole bunch of negative things to me, and I'm the one with a problem of what you're saying, and so that's those two things, your routine, and being accountable to your thoughts, because you can reverse engineer your day. And so like for me, it was, I exercise. I make sure I exercise every single day. I have a morning routine that I had gotten away from for a little bit, where, I take a walk. I go on an hour walk, but I listen to books. And to me, that just opens and expands my mind. Like, these are things that work for me. I start to control my diet. I'm one of those people to where if I start eating trash food and stuff like that, don't get me wrong, I indulge, but I recenter it as much as I can, because for me to be effective, I have to be the best version of myself. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm letting other people down. And, and then as I'm assessing my thoughts, is just like, okay, why am I feeling this way? And then it becomes really, because then you can reverse the trend. You can start telling, okay, well, then what am I grateful for? Like, if I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself, why am I letting this continue? Why am I letting other people dictate my thoughts? And so, mindset's everything. It will kill anything. I mean, you can will yourself past things that you've never even thought possible, if you simply just do not acknowledge the fact that it is an obstacle.
Yeah, I love that. And talking about Tony Robbins, he talks about creating daily rituals or habits, right? And so I believe that those are critical. And you mentioned some of those, exercising, listening to audiobooks or reading, things like that. And I like to do affirmations too on a daily basis before I go to sleep and when I wake up, just to set up the precedence for my day. Like, I want to be all up and, positive. And so I do those things. And so I think that's critical in just your life in general, right? Let's talk about the idea of coaching over 300 plus students and how has that experience been, not necessarily, well, actually in all aspects, not only helping them, but also helping yourself. Because I believe that when you're giving back, there's something that comes back to you. And what is that for you, that gratification? Or
it's like I talked about in the beginning, is the rising tide raises all ships. And, when the biggest misconception with coaching is like, ours is in the real estate and real estate investment space, is you're more of a life coach than anything. I spend more time talking to people about their routines and their mindset than I do the actual nuance of this. Is none of this is difficult. I mean, you're in real estate, like none of it's difficult. It's a process. There are steps, and along the way, there are things that can, you're going to run into angry sellers. You're going to there's just a lot of things that can really throw you off. And, that's been the most rewarding and gratifying, is because the work that we're doing transcends beyond just the one-on-one connection. It's, we're setting up families. These are people who felt stuck and looked to us for guidance to get out of whatever circumstance it was that they were in. And that's the biggest thing. It's those connections. I just had one of my students today message me, and she's like, I'm going for my real estate license. Like, she was a wholesaler before. So we worked through with that. And I mean, she was someone that joined one of my boot camps, and on the second day, using everything she learned from the first day, got a deal under contract and worked it through. And I was like, it's because you listened. I said, I didn't tell you anything special. I'm like, right. You live in Alabama. I live in Texas. Like, yeah. This, don't give me the credit for something that you did. Yeah. And to be able to see her face light up and to hear her confidence, and then to know that I left a lasting impact. I mean, this was 1.5 years ago that her and I had first had an interaction. We stayed in touch. And so when you hear how you've positively impacted people's lives, and, you help pull them from situations that, I was in, that others were in, because my story is not special at all. It's, you don't realize how many other people come from broken homes until you start talking about the fact that you're from a broken home.
Right. Yeah. True.
It's like, oh, that happens more often than you would think.
Yeah.
But to be able to change people's lives like that, to impact that, there's no greater feeling.
Yeah. No, and I think part of that too is it just comes down to, how are you impacting other people, right? And I like what you mentioned, even in real estate, you're finding yourself doing more coaching or having them build, some sort of habits. And it's funny because I've been through a lot of programs too, in the past where I've joined, when I started my real estate journey, I joined many different gurus, and it was all about the tactics and the ideas and so on and so forth, which is all great, by the way, except one thing that I felt like it was missing was the component of the mindset and being able to create that aspect, because I can give you all the tools, I can give you everything for any business, by the way, except if your mind is not in the right place, then that can definitely take you down when you hear that first no, or the rejection, or you don't see the kind of results that you were looking to acquire. And so I feel like, more so, and I like the group that you have on Facebook and all that stuff. It's really about embodying the body and the mind and the soul and all that stuff, putting things together. And I think that's a really great way to, again, connect with people and bring people in a different space, right? So that's definitely something great that you guys are doing there, which I love seeing that and being part of that group, which is pretty awesome. Now, in terms of the people you hang around with, you've talked a lot about the people that saw things in you. How critical is that in terms of like the average 5, what people talk about?
It's everything. My life has changed since I moved from small town Wisconsin to just Dallas. It's one thing to surround yourself with people online, but to me, the rule of 5 is really physical presence. And because it was like when I did digital marketing, like I spent most of my time in my office, on calls like this. It's different when you're in the energy. And when I moved from Wisconsin to Texas and started to really see the difference in people's mentalities and how fast they moved and how they carried themselves, I started surrounding myself with completely different people, people that had the same positive, like there was never problems. There was always opportunities. And like, that's who I started to, like my business partners are great examples of that. And just the networks, because it's, to me, my circle has gotten tighter, but it's stronger. And you really have to be willing to take inventory of who is around you. And I think honestly, me breaking that chain and leaving where I did to come down here helped, because if you've been in a certain area for so long, it's hard to 86 some people from your life. You know what I mean? Like it's just the roots are deep. And, down here, when I was able to move, I could set boundaries differently, that if you didn't fit my dynamic, if you didn't fit like what my vision was, and you didn't make me better, just, hey, you know what? Like, it's cool. We can grab coffee here and there, but like, I got to go this way. Yeah. And it is so, it's probably one of the most important things that you could possibly do. Because it's going to affect your mindset. Like if you hang around with negative people, you're going to have a negative mindset. As simple as that.
Yeah. No, definitely. One thing I like that you mentioned is with consistency, persistence, and predictability, you can climb to some amazing heights.
Yeah.
And just kind of elaborate on that. Obviously, is the premise of all we've been talking about. There's definitely some very deep thoughts though with that statement. So if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So he's still a mentor to this day. One of those guys that saw something in a knucklehead young kid. That was from my regional manager when I was just a manager in training at the Buckle clothing store. And like this guy, like no matter how much I tried to like mess things up, was like, nope, this is who you're going to be. And I ended up soaring to great heights. But he goes, Kyle, with 3 things, he goes, you can be a great leader. He goes, you've got to be consistent, you've got to be persistent, and you've got to be predictable. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he goes, you need to show up every day. He goes, you need to be the best version of yourself. You got to show up every day. I'm like, okay. He goes, and if there's something that you want, if there's a goal that you want to achieve, he goes, you've got to be persistent in how you pursue it. He goes, and this is applicable in all forms of life, but he says, you've got to be predictable. He says, because you got to realize it's not about you, it's about everyone else. And people like predictable. People do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And the fastest way to not appear trustworthy is to be a wild card, is to not be predictable. And he goes, I'm not talking about, you do the same mundane things. He goes, but people need to understand and know that if they are going to work with you, what they are getting. He goes, it's a high energy, hardworking, lighthearted guy. He's like, that is you. He's like, be that guy every single time. He goes, if you can be those 3 things, he goes, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. He goes, you're going to be great.
Wow. How do you show up every day, right? Like, what about your sick? What about holidays? What about the weekends? Do you show up on those days too?
As best I can. The thing is that and I don't even know, like Michael Jordan said it. And this is like one of my like earliest memories of my childhood. Michael Jordan would always talk about why he dressed up. And like, I think they even touched on this in The Last Dance that they did as well. But he always tried to dress as nice as he did in public. He said, because there are so many people who are around me that might be the only time in their entire life that they interact with me. And so I don't want their one interaction with me to be the only, like to be negative, and that be their perception moving forward, because perception is reality. And so, you know what, every day I I try to bring it as best I can every single day, but it's, always be nice, to be never snap at people, just don't carry a negative, energy when you're around people. And it is amazing the doors that will open up, because I can't tell you, and I'm sure you've been the same way, is there have been people that I never thought I would see again.
Yeah.
And now we are working in a lot more close proximity than I ever thought we would.
Yeah, no, you know what? And I love that. Definitely show up to the best self, because that's that one impression, that only one impression you might have. You have to make it count. Know, like, and trust. Yeah. How do you get to, in any business, real estate or whatever, right? How do you get to that level of being able to get people for them to know you, like you, and trust you?
Yeah. So, this goes back to that consistent, persistent, and predictable piece, is that the thing is, like, and I used to, I mentor, people outside of just real estate, but the know, like, and trust is, just because I tell you that I'm trustworthy doesn't mean that you're going to trust me. It's through continuous action without the validation of others that is going to be what carries you forward. All too often, especially in society nowadays, and you see these coaches and stuff online, is they think that just because they jumped into the industry and tell you that they're great, that you should immediately, start doing business with them. It's like, no, I want to see you show up. And, it's like in the real estate, I'm not going to coach people unless, my other 2 businesses are doing that every single day. And that's the biggest thing with me, is that know, like, and trust is, and maybe this just goes back to like when I was in the military, like we had this saying called the tip of the spear, is I never asked my men to do something that I wouldn't do.
Gotcha.
And so the same goes in business is, I'm not going to ask you to allow me to coach you if I'm not doing it myself. And it just bleeds over. But to me, like that's where it all starts, is do the action, then the know, like, and trust will follow.
I love that. So Kyle, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So there's a couple different places. So Kyle Moses on Facebook. I've got a public profile, so please feel free to engage me. Follow me if my friends list is full. I like to connect with people. So there's two groups, depending on how you want to hang out with me. There's two different groups. There's the virtual wholesaling tips and techniques, but then there's my passion project, which is leading through change, which is how you and I connected.
Yep.
And leading through change I never even intended for it to start that way. It was just going to be me and another guy that were going to get on a live, and suddenly we had a bunch of panelists and people join in, and the group formed. But this beautiful community came from it, of people that were going through a tough time, we're going through crazy times, but it's don't get down on yourself. There's plenty of opportunity. Now is the time to bet big on yourself. And it has just evolved into so many amazing people sharing things. It's a pitch-free group. There's absolutely, like, if you can't go in that group and provide enough value to where someone wants to find you outside of there, you're not providing enough value.
Right.
And that's what I tell people. And so, those are the main places. You can follow me at Klemmer on Instagram. I mean, it's social media, there's plenty of,
they'll find you, right? Yeah,
absolutely. If you found enough value in what we're talking about today, you'll definitely, be able to find me. But the biggest thing is just being able to come on shows like yours and be able to provide value. It's not about me, that's the biggest thing.
Definitely. And I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
And you've given us a lot of great tips, by the way. So let's see if I can get one more from you. So if our listeners or viewers are going through some sort of challenge, what is one thing that they can do now to start overcoming that challenge?
Small steps cover great distances. And and what I mean by that is you're not going to change something overnight. You're not going to change something next week, next month, maybe not even next year. But if you take a lot of small steps, the one thing that I can tell you is don't ever be afraid to stop and appreciate how far you've come. You might not be at the objective, but you're still a much different person at that, wherever you are, than you were before. I'm not the same person I was a year ago, 2 years ago. And that was always the biggest thing is, small steps cover great distances, but never forget to appreciate the journey. And that's going to be, if you're in a hard spot, is, appreciate those small wins, because I can promise you, when you start stacking gratitude, you start building momentum, and good things will follow.
I love that. That's definitely a good message to pretty much end this. Kyle, thank you again for being here. I really appreciate, you're taking the time to speak to us. Is there anything else that you want to share with us before I let you go?
No, man, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope people find value in this, but this was amazing. This was a blast.
Awesome. So definitely. Again, thank you so much. And for the rest of you guys, please do me a favor. Make sure you come into this podcast, comment, share, like, and please follow us at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show on your favorite platform. I will see you at the next episode of the show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you tuned in to this podcast. You can find me at Spreaker.com, where you can like and subscribe. And to learn more about myself and my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at Facebook under Cesar R. Espino. Once again, thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. and know that you truly can overcome anything.